Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney has just declared the US-Canada relationship officially over. Not paused. Not in trouble. Over. After 150 years of shared wars, trade agreements, and growth in the auto sector, this split marks a seismic shift. It's all been fueled by President Trump's tariffs, and now the very structure of North American car production is shaking. The impact of counter-tariffs is hitting hard, especially on electric vehicles, supply chains, and cross-border assembly lines. The effects are immediate and they're severe. What happens when the tightest automotive alliance in the world suddenly slams the brakes? Buckle up, because the shockwaves are just beginning. The first signs of trouble are appearing where it hurts the most, the factory floor. Automakers like Stellantis have already taken action, furloughing nearly 900 workers across plants in both Canada and the US. These job cuts are a direct result of rising costs brought on by new tariffs. But this isn't just a temporary slowdown. It's the unraveling of a manufacturing partnership that dates back to the 1965 Auto Pact. For decades, parts crossed the border with precision. Canadian steel, American technology, and shared vehicle platforms made everything flow like clockwork. Now that finely tuned system is breaking down. Cross-border logistics are becoming more expensive. Companies are freezing hiring, delaying EV upgrades, or even shifting operations overseas to more stable markets like Europe and Asia. And let's face it, EVs depend on certainty. Battery production, plant transitions, and charging infrastructure all require long-term investment. Chaos is the last thing this system needs. Meanwhile, China is watching with interest. Its state-backed EV programs and steady policy support are positioning it to dominate the global market. If job cuts weren't enough, wait until you see what's happening to consumer prices. Inflation is already tough, but in this new tariff environment, buying a new EV is about to get a lot worse. A 25% levy on imported vehicles and components means the average imported car could cost between $8,000 and $12,500 and more. And it doesn't stop with new vehicles. Need a replacement battery? Expect to pay a lot more. Even basic EV parts, charging equipment, drivetrain components, anything sourced from Canada or other tariff-affected countries are all getting hit. Batteries alone make up 30% to 40% of an EV's cost, and they rely on minerals like lithium and potash, which Canada has in abundance. Now that those resources are under pressure, even American automakers like Tesla and Ford are feeling the squeeze. And remember, even US-based production isn't immune. Tesla still sources up to 40% of its parts from abroad, from aluminum to wiring harnesses. Every imported element now costs more. Elon Musk's vision of a zero-tariff zone between Europe and North America is beginning to look more like a fantasy than a future roadmap. Dealerships are caught in the storm. Some are raising prices to stay afloat, while others are pulling inventory to avoid the chaos. The result? Confused buyers, tighter budgets, and an EV adoption curve that's starting to lose traction. Electric vehicles were meant to be the comeback story for North America's aging auto sector. But now, thanks to the tariff war, that comeback is in danger. Legacy manufacturers like Ford and GM, along with new players like Lucid and Rivian, all depend on international supply chains: batteries, semiconductors, aluminum, and software. With tariffs now hitting every part of that system, production costs are skyrocketing by $4,000 to $6,000 per vehicle. Some automakers are already slamming the brakes. Ford has paused infrastructure investments in both Ontario and Michigan. Rivian has shelved its plans for a second factory, citing policy uncertainty. In plain terms, they're not willing to risk billions when the rules could change overnight. That's leaving the door wide open for global competitors. Chinese brands like BYD and NIO are building affordable EVs and are now poised to undercut North American models even further. Meanwhile, consumer confidence is slipping. Between longer wait times, higher prices, and confusing incentives, buyers are starting to hesitate. Just as EV adoption was gaining momentum, it's now beginning to stall. All of this is unfolding against a deeper political backdrop. Mark Carney didn't hold back when he announced that Canada is done leaning on the US. This isn't just diplomatic friction, it's a fundamental break in North American unity. For over 60 years, the US and Canada thrived on economic integration, especially in auto manufacturing. From Detroit to Ontario, production flowed freely across the border, evolving from gas engines to cutting-edge EV platforms. But that cooperation is collapsing. President Trump's tariff threats and his provocative comments, like suggesting Canada should be the 51st state, have pushed relations over the edge. Canada is now responding with retaliatory tariffs, exploring trade deals with Europe and Australia, and making it clear that its future won't depend on the US. This isn't just a policy change, it's a transformation of the entire automotive landscape. Supply chains, battery research projects, and manufacturing alliances are all at risk. And if Canada succeeds in forming a new trade coalition that leaves out the US, the global map of auto manufacturing will be redrawn. What started as a bilateral dispute is quickly becoming a global economic earthquake. President Trump's sweeping 10% tariffs on all imports and the harsher 25% on foreign-made vehicles have triggered retaliatory moves around the world. China has responded with a 34% tariff. Europe is preparing its own 20% response. Over 185 countries are now caught in this escalating conflict. But this isn't just about tariffs. It's about trust, consistency, and the long-term outlook for investment. Automakers are pulling back. Jaguar Land Rover is cutting exports to the US, while German manufacturers are reconsidering whether North America is still worth the trouble. Canada is already signing new deals with countries like France, Germany, and Mexico. The old trade routes are collapsing. Elon Musk's dream of a global zero-tariff zone is fading fast. So what happens next? EV makers face a tough decision. Should they move production abroad, rework their supply chains, or hit the brakes entirely? One thing's certain, volatility is the new normal. In this race, speed and flexibility will separate the winners from the ones left behind. This isn't just a messy breakup, it's a fundamental shakeup that could end North America's leadership in automotive innovation. With rising costs, production slowdowns, and shifting global alliances, the EV race might speed ahead without the US and Canada in the lead. China is accelerating. Europe is gaining ground. And unless the two North American giants find a way back to common ground, their reign in the auto world might be over. What do you think? Is this the real end of North American dominance in car manufacturing? Can EV makers adapt quickly enough to keep up? Can Canada thrive without US support in such a high-stakes industry? Is Elon Musk's global zero-tariff EV vision still realistic? And most importantly, are these trade wars pushing innovation or stalling it?